Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about something that I got an ask about a few days ago, which is dating musicians. I've made videos about this before, and a lot of my social side of music school type videos have talked about dating. But I think it's something that we need to talk about again because it's always good to have this information. And yeah, so I think the first thing I want to talk about is dating people in music while you're in music school. And it's a bit of a double edged sword because to some extent it's great. While you're in music school, you have a ton of commitments. You're practicing, you have concerts, you have gigs, you have all of these things going on, and dating non musicians can be really hard because they don't understand. They don't understand that your work happens mainly outside of the classroom, and while they may only have a couple hours of studying to do and a paper to write, we're constantly required to be putting in 4 or plus hours of rehearsal and practice outside of our normal schedules. So while your schedule looks really empty, it's really hard to actually find time to do things with people. Dating a musician, they don't have that issue because they also have those commitments. They understand, and even if they might not have as many that current semester, they do get the idea that, like, hey, I have a concert coming up. I can't hang out with you tonight. I need to go practice, or I have a rehearsal, and it's the only time I can rehearse with my pianist. Um, there's lots of things like that that are going to come up. That being said, you're also dating someone who you are going to see daily. That's great. It can be really nice because you get to see your significant other all the time. That's cool. Like, you actually get to spend time with them, and music is a bonding experience. But you also have to think about the fact that this relationship isn't guaranteed to last. And if you do break up, this is someone you have to see all the time. This is especially true if you're dating someone within your section or dating someone within your instrument type. A nice thing about dating someone outside of your instrument family, so woodwind player dating a brass player, woodwind player dating a string player, that kind of thing, is that you're not going to see them as much, and it's not like you can be in chamber groups together. But if you are dating within your instrument family, that's a very big possibility, and within your instrument type, clearly you're in the same studio or you play the same instrument, you're gonna encounter each other. And even if you are dating someone who's outside of your instrument family, you have ensembles together, you have classes together, like, you're gonna see them around. So that puts you in a situation where you're seeing your ex potentially daily. You're seeing them potentially hit on other people, date other people. Are you going to be okay with that? That's something that you definitely have to consider, and it's something that sucks to consider. Like, you don't want to think about breaking up with a person, but it's something that happens. And if the relationship does go south, is this someone that you are going to be able to get along with enough to function in a musical setting? Because the explanation of he's my ex-boyfriend, we don't get along, or she's my ex-girlfriend, we don't get along, or like there was a weird thing between us and now we don't get along, that doesn't fly in music school. That's not an acceptable excuse to not do something or not work with someone. So I mean, as much as it seems kind of crude to say, like, weigh your relationship options based on what they play, it is a factor to consider. I would never consider dating another flute player, even if I liked them, just because, one, I know myself and I know I'd be super competitive with them, and two, I know that how small the flute world is. And honestly, I haven't dated a lot of musicians, and I don't have a ton of experience with the backlash of it, but I have seen a lot of people go through really terrible breakups and have caused them to not take the opportunities they should have because they were trying to avoid a person. And that's awful. And if your relationship causes you to avoid people and avoid opportunities that you should be taking, then there's something that you need to reconsider. And honestly, that's something I would suggest that any of you consider before you even start a relationship. And I know that's really unromantic, but it's a reality of our field. Um, there's also the thing where the rumor mill happens. Um, I've talked about this a lot. I'm very, very quiet about my personal life. And yes, I talk to the internet on a weekly basis and I run a blog and you guys know stuff about me, but like you don't know the important things unless I've told you, unless I've made a conscious decision to tell you personally. And I think that really helps keep my music life separate from my dating life. And I am dating a musician right now, and I'm really happy with this relationship, but it's not something that everyone knows about. It's not something that everyone's asking me about, and it's not something I talk about unless prompted. Um, or I'm talking with someone who knows. It's my relationship is personal, and that's the policy I have, and it's not necessarily something that you want to do, but it's something that you need to think about whenever you're dating someone in the faculty Canadians call faculty of music encompasses everything. So when I'm saying faculty, I don't mean I'm dating the staff or the teachers. I'm saying someone within the music school. But it's not something that I let affect how I work professionally. The policy that we've always had is music first. So if I have to go take a gig and it means that we can't hang out, that's fine. I moved to Chicago, and he's not here. So there's this thing that music is always our first priority. And while we're at school and while we were at school together, our relationship was very professional while we were at school. Away from the school and away from music people, it's a different story. Like, we were a normal couple, but while we were at school, we actually basically acted like we were just friends that talked. Like, we would hang out and talk, but like you couldn't tell we were a couple unless you knew. And that might be overkill for some of you guys, but it's something that really helped our relationship and helped us keep our professional lives professional. Is I think that's another big thing is like, even though you're dating someone who is in the music school and you're clearly doing something, you clearly like the person, you still have to have a level of professionalism, because music school isn't just fun, it's a professional training system. So you have to be professional. Like, I hate to say that word 4,000 times, but it's true. And I think that transfers over into the real world, quote unquote. I mean, the music world doesn't really change that much once you leave school. It's just you don't have the classes anymore. But it's still the same very small, very rumor-filled world, and people are going to talk. So you have to, again, be thoughtful of what you're doing, I think, is basically the biggest thing. When you're dating a musician, as a musician, you have to think before you act. Which, I mean, obviously you want to do with every situation and any kind of relationship you enter into. But when you are dating someone who works in the same world as you do, you have to be very, very conscious of what you're doing. And that's not to say that music relationships can't work out. I know tons of people who have really amazing relationships and have married fellow musicians and even work in a chamber group together. That can be really great if it works out. But in the process, they had to be very careful about what was happening. And I think that's my biggest advice, is think before you act. Which, I mean, is just a cliche life advice thing, but it's the biggest factor in dating a musician. This is someone you work with for the rest of your life, potentially. Can you survive falling for them and then falling out of love with them? And if you can, then cool. If you can't, then maybe consider a different type of relationship with a person. I mean, it's hard. You can't control what you want to do, but it's definitely something that you have to think about. So that was 10 minutes of me rambling about dating. I hope it was helpful in some way. As always, if you guys have questions, let me know. And if you guys have video ideas, please let me know. And I will see you next week.